Hey there, and welcome to another deep dive. Big shout out to London Heartbeat C Academy in the UK for their help with this episode. If you're in healthcare and want to learn more, they have like 140 courses. So,
Mm.
yeah, definitely check those out. Oh, and don't forget to follow them on social media for even more great content: Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube. You're not going to want to miss discussions like the one we're about to have. Okay, so communication has been on my mind lately because,
Hmm.
well, I had a bit of a communication mishap. You know how it is. Picture this: I'm emailing a colleague, feeling all witty and smart now. And I accidentally hit reply all with a draft full of like snarky comments.
Yeah.
Not my finest moment. It was a painful reminder that communication can be tricky, even in the digital age. Speaking of tricky, you sent over some material on communication skills that we're going to dive into today. It's a training presentation called Communication for Success, and it is packed with interactive activities and practical advice. So get ready to level up your communication game.
It's funny you should mention that email mishap because this presentation starts with a quick activity, something you're supposed to do in 60 seconds. It doesn't say what it is, so it really piques your curiosity, and it gets you thinking about the importance of clear communication right from the start.
Ooh, a little mystery to kick things off. I like it.
Yeah.
And then we jump into activity 3, where you're asked to select an item from a bag and keep it safe. What do you think the takeaway is here? Is it about like taking ownership of your message or protecting the integrity of information?
Maybe it's about the importance of handling communication carefully and thoughtfully. The presentation then asks a seemingly simple question. So, what is communication? It's a good reminder that even though we communicate all the time, we don't always stop to think about what it really means and how it works.
It's like that saying, we all have two ears and one mouth and should use them proportionally. So let's break it down. What I is communication at its core?
The presentation describes it as signaling, the transmission of information through various means, like speaking, writing, even body language, all with the goal of creating understanding.
And understanding is key, especially in a management context, right? The presentation emphasizes that communication is a vital aspect of management.
Absolutely. Effective communication is the foundation of strong leadership. It's how leaders articulate their vision, delegate tasks, motivate their teams, and build relationships.
Makes sense. Next up is activity 5, a self-assessment asking how effective are your communication skills. It encourages you to take a look in the mirror and honestly evaluate your strengths and weaknesses.
This self-reflection is crucial because it helps you identify areas where you can improve. Are you a good listener? Do you express yourself clearly and assertively? These are questions we should all be asking ourselves.
Then the presentation dives into a list of scenarios where effective communication is important. Everything from teaching and appraisals to job interviews and business dinners. It's a pretty comprehensive list that highlights how communication skills impact almost every aspect of our lives.
It's a reminder that effective communication isn't just about giving speeches or writing reports. It's about navigating everyday interactions with colleagues, clients, friends, and family.
Couldn't agree more. Now the presentation shifts focus to the messenger, which leads to a discussion on styles of communication. This sounds like we're getting into the nitty-gritty.
Yes. The presentation breaks down 3 main communication styles: submissive, assertive, and aggressive. And it really emphasizes the benefits of assertive communication.
Okay, let's unpack that. What exactly does it mean to be an assertive communicator?
It means expressing your thoughts and feelings clearly and directly, while also respecting the perspectives of others. It's about finding a balance between being passive and aggressive. Submissive communicators often struggle to express their needs, while aggressive communicators tend to dominate conversations and disregard the feelings of others. Assertiveness is that sweet spot in the middle.
So it's about being confident and respectful at the same time.
Exactly. Assertive communication is about advocating for yourself without steamrolling anyone else. And activity 9, how assertive are you, helps you figure out where you fall on the spectrum. It's a great tool for self-awareness and personal growth.
I love that it encourages self-reflection throughout. Okay, next up is a section on dressing style, first perception. Now, this is something I've learned the hard way. Remember that conference where I showed up in ripped jeans and a band t-shirt? Let's just say I didn't exactly make the best first impression.
I think we all have those fashion moments we'd rather forget, but this section highlights an important point. People form judgments about you based on your appearance, whether we like it or not.
It's like a visual shortcut, right? Before you even say a word, your clothes are sending a message. What kind of advice does the presentation offer for choosing the right attire?
It encourages you to ask yourself some key questions before buying something to wear to work, like, is it appropriate for my job, or will I stand out in a good way? Less. It's about finding that balance between expressing your personal style and meeting the expectations of your workplace.
And there's one question that really stood out to me. Would my boss wear it? That's a great reality check.
Absolutely. It helps you align your wardrobe choices with the culture and expectations of your organization.
Activity 11 then encourages you to think about your own reactions to different styles of dress. Do you find yourself judging people based on their clothes? It's a good reminder to be mindful of our own biases.
Definitely. We all make snap judgments, but it's important to remember that first impressions aren't always accurate.
So any final thoughts on apparel before we move on?
The key takeaway is to never underestimate the power of first impressions. Dress appropriately for the occasion. And when in doubt, opt for conservative colors.
And just to be clear, underwear stays under your clothes. But seriously, folks, that first impression is crucial. As the presentation puts it, remember, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
It's a classic saying for a reason. Those initial moments can set the tone for an entire interaction, so it's important to make them count.
So true. And it's not just about what you wear, but how you carry yourself and what you say. Speaking of which, we're on to Activity 12, the sandwich technique. That sounds intriguing.
It certainly does. It makes you wonder how a sandwich can possibly relate to communication.
Well, Activity 13 breaks it down for us. The first part involves practicing your inflection by pretending to be a lawyer and saying, I see, I hear, I understand, I feel, but I don't agree with this, throw it out.
It's all about using your voice to convey confidence and emphasize certain points.
It's a great exercise for practicing vocal variety and using your voice as a tool for persuasion. The second part focuses on voice and becoming more expressive. You're given a script for selling a cleaning product. The floor is so dirty, the stains won't go. It's time for a change with Clean and Glow. Just shake it up and pour it down. Wow, it looks so good with Clean and Glow, Clean and Glow. Talk about a dramatic product pitch.
It highlights the impact of enthusiasm and vocal tone on how a message is received. Even a simple product description can be captivating when delivered with energy and conviction.
Right. Now here's a curveball. The presentation tells us to avoid certain words, but, however, nevertheless, and sometimes even no. Why do you think these words are on the do not use list?
Those words, especially but, however, and nevertheless, can come across as confrontational or dismissive. They create a sense of opposition, even if that's not the intention.
So instead of saying, but I disagree, you could say something like, I understand your perspective, and I'd like to offer a different viewpoint. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. It's about finding a more collaborative and respectful way to express differences of opinion.
That makes sense. And what about the word no? Why is it sometimes a no-no?
While no is sometimes necessary, it can be abrupt and shut down communication. In some cases, it might be more effective to offer an alternative solution or explanation.
Good point. Now let's move on to Activity 14. You said it. Show me the money. Any guesses what this one's about?
It seems to be focusing on the power of words to persuade and influence, perhaps with a playful nod to a famous movie line.
Exactly. It ties into the next section, which is all about syllable stress. The presentation uses the phrase, I am content with the content of this training, and emphasizes different syllables to demonstrate how it can completely change the meaning.
It's a great way to illustrate how emphasis can alter the interpretation of a sentence. It also highlights the importance of clear pronunciation and enunciation in spoken communication.
Then we have another example, RSVP, this. The phrase is, woman without her man is nothing. Can you decipher the intended meaning based on syllable stress?
It's a classic example of how punctuation and phrasing can change the meaning of a sentence. If you emphasize man, it reinforces a traditional, perhaps outdated view of women's dependence on men. But if you emphasize nothing, it flips the script and becomes a statement of female empowerment.
Wow, that's incredible. A simple shift in emphasis can totally transform the message.
It highlights the power of language and the importance of being mindful of how we use it.
And just to make sure we're all paying attention, we have Activity 16. What was that again?
Yeah.
It's a playful reminder that effective communication requires both the speaker and the listener to be fully engaged.
Absolutely. It's a two-way street. We need to be present, attentive, and willing to ask for clarification when needed.
So true. The next section provides 4 suggestions for more productive questions. First up, ask questions that elicit detail. These are often questions that encourage people to go beyond surface-level responses.
What? Questions are incredibly powerful for gathering information, uncovering insights, and understanding the nuances of a situation. They encourage the other person to elaborate and provide more context.
Second, ask open questions that require more than a yes or no. The presentation specifically mentions what, why, where, and how. It seems like closed questions can sometimes be conversation killers.
They can be, especially if you're trying to build rapport or encourage a more in-depth discussion. Open questions invite the other person to share their thoughts and experiences more freely.
Then we have ask some questions that are a little bit surprising or edgy. Now this one sounds interesting.
It's about shaking things up and challenging assumptions. Surprising questions can spark creativity, lead to unexpected insights, and make conversations more memorable.
I like it. And finally, use some if. This is about exploring possibilities and encouraging imaginative thinking.
Hypothetical questions are great for brainstorming, problem solving, and strategic planning. They help us think outside the box and consider different perspectives.
Okay, moving on to words. Seems like we're finally getting to the heart of communication. The advice here is pretty straightforward. Keep it brief. Keep your language simple. Slang or profanity is neither correct nor effective. And last but not least, plan your conversation.
It's a reminder that clarity, conciseness, and respect are key principles of effective communication. We should choose our words carefully and consider the impact they will have on our audience.
Solid advice. Now get ready for Activity 17 because it involves some serious email analysis. We're going to be reading the following emails closely.
Email is such a prevalent form of communication in today's world, so it's essential to understand the nuances of email etiquette and how to write effective messages.
Totally.
Yeah.
So let's dive into these emails and see what we can learn. First up, we have an email about stairwell access. What are your initial thoughts?
This stairwell access email, it's a great example of what not to do. It's written entirely in all caps, which comes across as shouting. The tone is also very aggressive and accusatory.
Yeah, it feels like whoever wrote this email is about 2 seconds away from bursting a blood vessel. Not exactly the best way to get your point across.
Exactly. The content itself is also overwhelming. It's a huge block of text with no clear structure or formatting. It would be much more effective to break the information down into bullet points or separate paragraphs.
Okay, let's move on to the next email, which has the subject line, Re L. Ellison. It's a reply to someone named Glenn Fleischman. And it seems to be about content management systems. But honestly, I'm struggling to follow the thread.
I see what you mean. This email is full of technical jargon and assumes the recipient has the same level of knowledge. It also uses very complex sentence structures, making it difficult to understand the main point.
And the tone is pretty condescending too, right? It feels like the writer is talking down to the recipient.
Yes, there's a definite sense of superiority that doesn't come across well. Remember, effective communication is about building bridges, not walls.
Okay, onto the walkie-talkie email. This one is from a UK buyer to an HK supplier. It's a fairly straightforward request for information about promotional items for Christmas.
This email is much better. It's clear, concise, and professional. The language is simple and easy to understand, and the request is clearly stated upfront.
Agreed. It's a good example of how to get your message across effectively without any unnecessary fluff. Now for the disappearing ink pen email. This one is from a Bob Miller to a John Smith at officeworksconsulting.com. It's promoting a disappearing ink pen.
The content itself is fine, but there are some formatting issues. The sender's name isn't capitalized, and there's a grammatical error in the sentence. Any interested in mimes, please kindly inform us. These might seem like small details, but they can impact the overall professionalism of your message.
It's like that saying the devil is in the details.
Yeah.
Okay, last but not least, we have the hey email. This one is from a Sandy to Kevin at officeworksconsulting.com. I think it's safe to say this email is a train wreck.
This is a prime example of how not to communicate in a professional setting. It's an angry rant about a coworker, filled with all caps, exclamation points, and slang. It's completely inappropriate and unprofessional.
It's like an email explosion of negativity.
It underscores the importance of maintaining composure and professionalism, even when you're feeling frustrated.
So after dissecting all those emails, the presentation offers some general format, the basics, for writing effective emails. It advises to write a salutation for each new subject email. Try to keep the email brief, one screen length. Return emails within the same time you would a phone call. And of course, check for punctuation, spelling, and grammatical errors.
These are essential guidelines for ensuring your emails are clear, concise, and professional. They demonstrate respect for the recipient's time and attention.
And the presentation also reminds us to don't write when you're angry. Solid advice. There are also tips on crafting clear subject lines, using reply all sparingly, and adding recipients after drafting the email to avoid sending an incomplete message.
These are all great tips to keep in mind. Subject lines should be informative and concise. And Reply all should only be used when it's truly necessary.
Now let's switch gears and talk about telephone etiquette. I don't know about you, but I've had my fair share of frustrating phone experiences. Endless hold times, rude customer service reps, you name it.
We've all been there. But the presentation offers some valuable insights into how we can improve our phone communication and create a more positive experience for both parties.
So it starts by asking some thought-provoking questions about how we feel when we're on the receiving end of bad phone etiquette. How do you feel when a business doesn't answer the phone until after many rings? How do you feel when someone says, "Please hold," and doesn't give you time to answer? How do you feel when you can hear a lot of noise in the background? It really makes you stop and think about the caller's perspective.
It's a great exercise in empathy. By putting ourselves in the caller's shoes, we can better understand the impact of our own phone habits.
Let's dive into the 11 most frequent caller complaints and see if we can offer some solutions. First up, the telephone rings for a long time before it is answered. The advice is simple. Try to answer calls within 3 rings.
That's a good rule of thumb. It shows respect for the caller's time and conveys a sense of professionalism.
Second, they place me on hold for sometimes it seems hours. What's the solution for this one?
If you need to put someone on hold, be sure to take down their name and a brief description of their issue so you can get back to them efficiently and with the right information.
That makes a lot of sense. It shows that you're paying attention and that you value their time. Third, the line is busy for hours, it seems. The advice, try to keep calls short. Seems like a no-brainer, but it's easy to get caught up in a conversation and lose track of time.
It's about being mindful of both your time and the caller's time. Keep your calls focused and to the point.
Fourth, they are very rude and get offensive when asked their full name, or sometimes just won't give it. The solution, try to stay pleasant. Again, seems obvious. But it's amazing how quickly people can lose their cool on the phone.
Maintaining a calm and professional demeanor, even when dealing with difficult callers, is crucial. Remember, you're representing your company.
Fifth, they let me talk on, only to realize that they're not the person I should be talking to. The advice here is to politely interrupt the caller if you are unable to help them. I know interrupting can be awkward, but it's better than wasting everyone's time.
Exactly. A simple, "Excuse me, but I think you might need to speak with someone in a different department," can save everyone time and frustration.
Sixth, if I call the wrong department for help, they don't give me suggestions to where I should be calling. They just say, "I don't know, not our department." The presentation points out that your number might be similar to another department's and suggests being helpful instead of hanging up or claiming ignorance.
It's about taking that extra step to ensure the caller gets the help they need, even if it's not from you directly.
Seventh, they don't clearly listen to my needs before they transfer me to the wrong person. The solution, listen to the caller carefully. Are we sensing a theme here?
Active listening is essential for effective communication in any context, but it's especially important on the phone when you don't have visual cues to help you understand the caller's message.
Eighth, sometimes they disconnect me while transferring my call. The advice, be careful when transferring a call. That seems pretty self-explanatory.
It's a reminder to take the time to ensure the transfer is completed successfully and that the caller isn't left hanging.
Ninth, they told me to call back but never gave me a name or number or division to ask for. The solution, if you tell a caller to call back later, tell them which number to call. Again, it's about being helpful and providing clear information.
It's about making the caller's experience as smooth as possible. Give them the information they need to follow up easily.
10th, the person says, "Wait," and then talks to other coworkers without putting me on hold so that I can't hear their small talk. The solution, use the hold button. I feel like this one should be a mandatory part of phone training.
Absolutely. It's a basic courtesy that can make a big difference in the caller's experience.
And finally, the 11th complaint. They answer with an aggravated voice, as if I disturbed them by calling. The presentation offers a great reminder. It may be your 99th call for the day, but it's still the caller's first call.
It's all about perspective. We need to treat each caller with respect and understanding, regardless of how busy or stressed we are.
Well said. The presentation then provides some conversation techniques, acceptable responses for common phone situations. For example, if someone is out of the office, you could say, she's not in the office at the moment. Would you like to leave a message on his or her voicemail?
These are helpful scripts for handling various scenarios professionally and efficiently. They offer a balance of clarity and courtesy.
Okay, time for activity 19. It's called What's in the Bag.
Yep.
and features a picture of a very surprised-looking monkey. What do you think this activity is trying to convey?
I think this is a playful introduction to the topic of nonverbal communication. Perhaps it's meant to get us thinking about how much we can communicate without even saying a word.
Ooh, I like that. And it leads nicely into activity 20, which asks, how important is body language?
Oh.
I have a feeling you're going to tell me it's very important.
You bet. Nonverbal cues, like facial expressions, posture, and gestures, are a huge part of communication. They can convey emotions, reinforce or contradict our words, and even influence how others perceive us.
It's like that saying, actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. So paying attention to our body language is crucial, especially in professional settings.
The presentation then delves into the barriers of communication, listing perceptions, language differences or accents, noise, wordy pharyngeal, and a lack of attention span. It's amazing how many things can get in the way of effective communication.
It's true. Misunderstandings can arise from differences in perception or language. Noise can disrupt the flow of conversation. Strong emotions can cloud our judgment, and a lack of attention can make it difficult to absorb information.
It's a reminder that communication is a complex process that requires effort and awareness from both the sender and receiver. Now on to activity 24, which asks, what's in it for me? I'm guessing this is about understanding your audience's motivations and tailoring your message accordingly.
Exactly. Effective communication isn't just about broadcasting your message. It's about understanding the other person's needs and perspective.
Okay, brace yourself for this next question because it's a big one.
Yeah.
So what is the basis of all communication?
Yeah.
Drum roll, please.
Listening skills.
Yes, you nailed it. It might seem obvious, but I think we often forget how important listening truly is.
It's true. We're often so focused on what we want to say next that we fail to truly listen and understand the other person's message.
The presentation breaks down the difference between hearing vs listening. Hearing is a passive physical process, while listening is an active learned skill that requires conscious participation.
It's about engaging your mind and focusing your attention on the speaker and their message. It's about being present in the moment and absorbing not just the words, but also the underlying emotions and intentions.
And here's a quote that really resonated with me. Most people tend to be hard of listening rather than hard of hearing. Ouch. But it's so true.
It's a wake-up call for all of us to become more conscious and intentional listeners.
So what are some of the bad listening habits we need to break? The presentation lists criticizing the subject or speaker, getting overstimulated, listening only for what you want to hear, not taking notes or outlining everything, tolerating or creating distractions, letting emotional words block the message, and wasting the time difference between the speed of speech and the speed of thought. Wow, that's a lot to think about.
We all have our listening pitfalls, but the good news is that we can improve our listening skills with practice and awareness.
Like what? Give us some tips.
One simple technique is to focus on paraphrasing what the speaker has said, to ensure that you understand their message. You can also ask clarifying questions to deepen your understanding and show that you're actively listening.
Great advice. And that brings us to activity 25. Say that again. It's a lighthearted way to remind us that it's okay to ask for clarification when needed. We don't have to pretend we understand everything perfectly all the time.
Exactly. It's much better to ask for clarification than to let a misunderstanding fester.
So now that we've established the importance of listening, the presentation introduces a concept called doublethink. This sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
Doublethink involves understanding not only your perspective, but also the customer's perspective and their perception of your perspective. It's about finding common ground where both parties feel heard and understood.
That sounds challenging, but incredibly valuable.
It is. It requires empathy, active listening, and a willingness to step outside of our own assumptions.
So how do we put this doublethink into practice? The presentation offers 5 steps to handle client interactions with ease.
Step 1 is to approach each client situation in a charge-neutral manner. This means setting aside your own biases and preconceived notions, and approaching the interaction with an open mind.
Step 2 is to honor your client's perspective. This involves acknowledging their feelings and experiences, even if you don't necessarily agree with them.
It's about validating their emotions and showing that you're genuinely trying to understand their point of view.
Step 3 is to be curious about your clients and their issues. This involves asking open-ended questions to gather information and gain a deeper understanding of their needs and concerns.
Curiosity demonstrates genuine interest and helps build trust and rapport.
Step 4 is to ask powerful, clarifying questions. This means asking questions that elicit detailed responses and ensure that you're both on the same page.
Clarifying questions can prevent misunderstandings and help you address the client's needs more effectively.
And finally, step 5 is to create a clear agreement about the resolution and next steps. This involves summarizing the agreed-upon plan of action and confirming the next steps to ensure everyone is aligned.
It's about creating a sense of closure and providing the client with a clear understanding of what to expect moving forward.
This 5-step process seems like a great framework for handling any client interaction, from resolving complaints to negotiating contracts.
It's a reminder that effective communication is at the heart of building strong client relationships and ensuring customer satisfaction.
Speaking of customer satisfaction, there's a quote in the presentation that really resonated with me. If we don't take care of our customers, someone else will.
That's a powerful statement that highlights the importance of prioritizing customer care. In today's competitive market, businesses can't afford to take their customers for granted. It's so true. Now let's shift gears again and talk about conversational skills. The presentation asks a few questions that I think a lot of us can relate to. Do you hate the silence? Are you worried about what the other person thinks of you for saying nothing? When they are talking, are you too busy thinking of what to say rather than actually listening to what is being said? Do you go away wishing you'd have said this or that?
It's very common to feel awkward or self-conscious in conversations, especially with people we don't know well. But the good news is that we can improve our conversational skills with practice and awareness.
So what are some of the common conversational errors we need to watch out for? The presentation starts with self-absorption. I think we all know those people who just love to talk about themselves.
It's a classic conversation killer. The presentation suggests a mature alternative. Ask about others. What kind of work do you do? Or where are you from originally?
That's a great way to show genuine interest in the other person and shift the focus away from yourself.
Exactly. Conversation should be a two-way street. Expert speaker, not a one-man show. The next conversational error is poor listening, which, let's be honest, most of us are guilty of from time to time.
It's easy to get distracted or to start formulating our response before the other person has even finished speaking. But the presentation offers a mature alternative. Give others their due by listening carefully rather than rehearsing your own thoughts.
It's a reminder to be present in the moment and truly engage with what the other person is saying.
Right, and then there are the dreaded Me Too ploys, those people who try to one-up you with every story you tell.
Oh yeah, I know the type.
The presentation suggests asking questions to draw the other person out instead of trying to steal the spotlight. For example, if someone is talking about a trip they took to Mexico, you could ask, what kind of experience did you have in Mexico?
That's a much better way to keep the conversation flowing and to show that you're actually interested in what the other person has to say.
Exactly. And finally, we have the grand finale of errors. Stuck in one topic. We've all been in those conversations that go round and round in circles.
It's like being trapped in a conversational cul-de-sac.
The presentation advises us to be prepared to introduce a new topic or take a detour from the dead one.
That makes sense. It's about being adaptable and recognizing when it's time to move on to something else.
Right. A graceful transition to a new topic can keep the conversation fresh and engaging.
Now, Activity 27 is all about putting these conversational skills into practice.
It's about applying these concepts in real-world situations and experimenting with different approaches to see what works best for you.
The next section focuses on business cards. It seems a bit old school in the digital age,
Oh,
but I guess they still have their place.
they do. Business cards are a tangible representation of your professional identity and a great way to make a lasting impression.
So what are the do's and don'ts of business card etiquette? The presentation advises to never say just ran out or forgot them, which makes perfect sense. It also emphasizes making them easy to access and handing over the card in a professional manner. And finally, notate each card collected so you can remember who you met and what you talked about.
Those are all excellent points. It's about being prepared, professional, and respectful in all your interactions.
Okay, Activity 28 is called Dig Deeper and features a reminder note with an apple on it. It seems to be encouraging us to reflect on what we've learned and continue to develop our communication skills.
Exactly. Communication is an ongoing journey, not a destination. There's always room for improvement.
So the final piece of advice in the presentation is to provide engaging answers to common questions like, how's business and what's going on? Instead of giving generic responses like, pretty good or same old thing, Try to offer something more specific and interesting.
For example, you could say, we're actually working on a really exciting project right now, or things have been pretty busy, but in a good way. It's a small change, but it can make a big difference in how you're perceived.
And remember, don't act like you're an FBI agent. A little humor can go a long way in creating a more relaxed and enjoyable interaction.
Absolutely. It's about being approachable and authentic.
So the presentation ends with a call to action. How can you improve? It suggests paying attention to how others respond when you're talking, and even asking a few trusted friends or colleagues for feedback on your communication style.
That's great advice. Sometimes we need an outside perspective to help us see our blind spots.
And if you're really brave, you can always record yourself and listen back to how you sound. I'm not sure I'm ready for that level of self-scrutiny, though.
It can be a little daunting, but it can also be incredibly revealing. You might be surprised by what you notice about your tone of voice, pacing, or even the words you choose.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything in this Communication for Success presentation. It's been a whirlwind tour of communication styles, email etiquette, phone skills, and even the power of body language.
It's been a fascinating deep dive into the complexities of communication, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, I wanted to mention one more activity from the presentation. It's simply called Activity. It involves a series of physical actions. Stand, raise your right hand, bend it at the elbow, and touch the back of your left shoulder several times. I'm not sure what the purpose of this is, but it definitely caught my attention.
It could be a way to demonstrate the mind-body connection and how our physical state can impact our communication. Or maybe it's just a way to get the blood flowing after all that sitting and listening.
Either way, I think it's a good reminder that communication is a multifaceted process that involves our words, our body language, and even our physical actions. It's about being present, engaged, and intentional in all our interactions.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Wow, we covered a lot of ground today. From communication styles to email etiquette to the power of body language, this Communication for Success presentation is packed with valuable insights.
It really is a comprehensive guide to becoming a more effective communicator.
So, let's quickly recap a few key takeaways for our listeners. First, those first impressions. They matter. Whether it's your attire, your body language, or your communication style, make sure you're putting your best foot forward.
Absolutely. And don't forget the importance of active listening. Put those bad listening habits aside and truly engage with the speaker. You'll be amazed at how much more you learn and how much stronger your relationships become.
Couldn't agree more. And finally, remember that assertiveness is your friend. It's about finding that balance between expressing yourself clearly and respectfully, while also considering the perspectives of others.
Those are great points to remember.
Well, that brings us to the end of another deep dive. We hope you found this exploration of communication skills helpful and insightful.
It's been a pleasure discussing these important concepts with you.
And a huge thank you again to London Heartbeat's D Academy in the UK for their support in making this episode possible. Listeners, if you're in the healthcare field and looking to enhance your skills, be sure to check out their website. They offer over 140 courses, so there's something for everyone.
And don't forget to follow them on social media for more great content like this. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube.
So what communication skill or why are you going to focus on leveling up first? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.